Well, today I have had the pleasure of welcoming in Michael Crawford so we could have a little bit of a chat this morning. Hi, Michael. How are you?
Good. How are you, Pam?
Doing great, doing great. I do have to say, yesterday when I heard the news about your resignation, I was sad, very sad about that because, as we have talked many times before, very um, impressed by the things that you have accomplished. And, I was always a big supporter of the project at Hall of Fame Village and you as well. And I always, watched your passion for this. And we talked about your book and all the other things that you have done in your career and bringing that to Canton, I always felt like was a really good thing. But tell me a little bit about how you're feeling right now, now that everybody knows about this.
Well, I think it's the same thing. Sad, right? I certainly had every intention of building and seeing this come to reality. Over the last, I'll call it 6 or so months, we've, as you know, been working towards a solution to our capital needs, which is to take the company private. And I know that comes with mixed reviews. I know some shareholders are really disappointed that the stock hasn't, as people like to say, gone to the moon and made millionaires out of folks. But look, I would say that as a startup company, a small public company, I've said this before, when you look at the last 4 years, it's unimaginable what the world has had to face. And it's quite sad that it has delayed our progress and impacted our ability to finish things that we've started, predominantly the water park. But this take private is a really good solution. It allows for some value to go back to shareholders, including myself and others. Look, I think the mistake that people make is they believe that I get something or the board gets something that they don't get. And that's simply not true. We were as invested in this company, both personally and professionally, as the shareholders were. So it's really sad for me, but it's also, I take comfort in the fact that we got the company to a place where a group of professional individuals stepped forward and said, "We see what you've done, we see the vision, and we see how you've accomplished a lot of what you set out to do. And we think that if we give you more money and we take you out of this crazy world of being a public company, you'll have a really great shot at doing all the things that we think you can do, and even at an even higher level." And when that happens, it's perfectly normal for new ownership to come in and say, "Hey, we'd probably like to consider a change of leadership." And so this wasn't a decision that I made. It was a decision that I think was made collectively. I always want to do the right thing for the project and the company and the people, and frankly, the community. And so I agreed that, it was probably time for me to move on. And timing is everything. Look, I was offered an opportunity elsewhere, and I had turned down other opportunities. But, with knowing what I know now and where the company's going to go and the different need for leadership that's different than what I've provided, it was a good chance for me to sort of step aside. And as my agreement says, I'm still going to stay for the next few months, and I'm still very passionate about getting the take private done and setting the company up for success. I invested almost 6.5 years of my life in this. And so for me, I'm not a person that likes to lose. I want to win. I want to win for the community and for everybody that put their heart and soul into this. And it's sad to step aside. It really is.
Yeah, I remember you saying you came here and you stayed in the house without heat and and it was going to be a challenge, but you were ready and willing and able to take on that challenge. The go private part, explain that just a little bit how that works for people who don't really understand that.
Sure. Well, look, over the course of the last several years, in our public filings, we have said we need new capital to come in, both to continue the operation of the company and to continue building the assets that we've talked about. The hard part about the stock market and the hard part about the macroeconomic environment we faced is our stock price just has continued to decline. And that's what makes a lot of people unhappy that have invested in the company. we've still executed against the game plan. We still bring great big events, and we still have built a lot of assets that are profitable today. A hotel, an office building, an indoor dome, a fantastic youth sports complex. We've done big sponsorship deals. We've done big partnership deals. But if I were to go out today and raise money in the stock market, I'd be doing it at like 88, 89 cents a share. And I need 20 or $30 million. So you can imagine how many shares, even if I could sell that number of shares, how many shares would be needed. And all the existing shareholders, their price would continue to go down, because every time you issue new shares, the existing share price goes down. So we agreed that with this proposal from these investors, that would be the better solution. We will pay for, if the merger gets completed, and I have every expectation that it should, any existing stock will be repaid, meaning the company will buy it back at a certain price. We haven't announced the price. There was a price put out a long time ago, but the stock price has continued to decline significantly since then. So we're still working on a price. The company will enter into an agreement with that entity, that new group that wants to take the company private. It's like a merging of their entity and ours. There will be a shareholder meeting. All existing shareholders have the right to come forward. We're going to say to them, this is the only option. This is the best option. And if this option isn't pursued, there's a real likelihood of what you see Forever 21 and Joanne Fabrics, an insolvency, meaning a bankruptcy. And so we want to give value back to the shareholders best we can, but they have to vote on it. That is going to be their choice, and we're going to strongly encourage it as a positive vote. If that vote turns out positive, within a few days, a week, each of those shareholders will get a distribution of however many shares they owned times the buyback price. And so if you owned, simple math, if you owned 100 shares and the buyback price was $1, you get $100 back, right? Yeah. And then after that, the obligations of the company to report publicly about its financials and all the SEC requirements and the filings and things like that basically go away. And it saves a lot of money for the company. It's a very expensive proposition to be public. It's several millions of dollars each year, because you have to have outside independent auditors that audit all your financials. You have to file, you have to pay fees to NASDAQ and SEC. We're listed on the NASDAQ. Everything you announce costs money, right? So for me, the public company was always something that was a challenge for us in the world we're living in, all of the catastrophic events and being a smaller startup company. And so the take private, if you're really invested in the long-term success of the company, that's the best option.
So, Billy, my producer, and I was talking about this on the air this morning. I said, maybe I'm a little Pollyanna about things, but, he brings people from out of town to see the village, to go and eat and participate in different things. I do the same thing. And when we bring people there who are from out of town, they're extremely impressed by what's happening. It feels like it's the local folks who just see the unfinished water park as the issue. Do you think that as you move on, do you think for the new person that steps in, it's always going to be that battle to convince the locals that it's okay, that it's going to be successful?
Look, I would say a couple things. Remember when I came in, the project had stopped completely again, right? It was effectively bankrupt. Now, it was a small private company then. The stadium wasn't finished. The youth fields weren't finished. The houses, everything was still there. And so we had to come in and convince folks that we were going to do what we said we were going to do. And I believe we did. And if the world wouldn't have turned upside down last year, and the lending environment wouldn't have dried up so badly, the water park was started with the right funds and we had the right capital stack in place. And then we lost a lender, and that stopped the construction. We never started construction unless we knew we had the funds. So everything else was built on time, on budget. This would have been the same. I think the new person coming in comes in a private world, right? with the money behind them. And so immediately, and I'm excited about that, a lot of people, they want a successor, but they want to be known as the better person, not they don't want the person following them to do better. I'm the opposite. I want the person following me to be great. I want them to finish that water park. I want them to finish that hotel. This community deserves that. It has, there are skeptics out there for sure. I think the unfortunate part, I said to you before, the people who invested and their sort of animosity towards the stock price and the company get clouded with what the company's actually accomplished. And, 400 million of assets and all the investment into the community. A lot of people, Pam, don't even know we invested $7 million in a football operations center for Canton McKinley High School.
Yeah.
We gave over $1 million to the Parks Division for improvement. We built a parking lot for guests over there in the Parks Department underneath 77, across from the Hall of Fame. We have paid the school a lease for the land of like almost $300,000 a year. We pay payroll taxes. We've employed almost 300 people. We did almost 6,000 construction jobs. The economic impact of all of the big events and youth events and everything we have, it's not a coincidence that the bed tax in Stark County has grown exponentially. It's grown because we're bringing in all these people that are staying multiple days. So they're staying in our hotels, they're shopping in our merchandise locations, they're eating in our restaurants. The economic impact the village has had over the last 3 years, tens and tens of millions of dollars. And so I wish people could understand that a city and a government needs to run in a way where business is successful in bringing, economic growth. And that economic growth allows for things like potholes and roads to be filled and police salaries to be paid and schools and so on. And so I'm not claiming that's all in the village. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of great businesses around. I've often referred to other entities like Hartville and Gervasi and others. I mean, these are great, great community events. And I think the Tourism Bureau for Canton does a fantastic job trying to bring in large scale events as well. But I do believe because we've built such a unique location with so many different assets, indoor dome, NFL certified stadium, massive youth sports complex, places for people to eat, places for people to stay, that has had a big impact on our community. And it has allowed, if you talk to the Economic Development Board for Stark County, they'll say they use us as a selling tool to get new companies to come in and set up shop. Yeah. From a quality of life point of view. So I do hope the new person gets the benefit of the doubt and people will give them the opportunity to be successful, because I think it's going to have it has had and will have such a massive impact on what we do in Stark County and Canton, Ohio.
Any regrets for you?
You always have regrets, right? I try not to spend too much time today thinking about the things that I did yesterday, because I still have a whole bunch that I need to accomplish today. I think there were times where we probably felt like the construction of the water park was going to be completed. And so as we were talking to partners and we were talking to new sponsors, we had the line of sight was very clear. It was 50% done. We were still going, and then it had to stop. And I wish that we could have finished that, in my time. I wish that we could have gotten the hotel done, because I do think what people are going to see with this integrated model, water parks around Ohio right now, I'm talking the Great Wolfs and the Kalaharis and others. They do between 800,000 and 1 million people, a little over 1 million visitors a year, staying 2 or 3 days, right? And so that's going to have a big impact on tourism and economic impact on the city and the county. And by the way, I'll just say this, I'm biased, I'll say it anyways. Our water park design is version 3.0 past what's already in Ohio. I think people are going to walk in there and go, wow, this is absolutely phenomenal. So I regret we couldn't do that. I regret that, we had to deal with really hard times, but I wish we could have gotten people to understand that, we're doing everything we possibly can. That team that works out there, Pam, they kill themselves every single day. They work 7 days a week. They're trying their best, and it's hard for them to hear the negativity. And so I have regrets that they have to go through that. I wish, I take people's lives very seriously and their income and their families. I wish they didn't have to go through that. And look, at the end of the day, everything that's happened. I'm the guy that sits at the top of the heap, and so I have to take responsibility for it. And I wish we could have launched sooner and better, but I have every confidence that the take private is going to allow for more of that to happen, and people will start to believe, and people will have a great opportunity to go out and be entertained and enjoy the village as they have over the last 3 years as well.
Yeah, me too. I agree. You mentioned about that you'll be staying on. I think your last official day is in May. Is that right? May 18th, I think.
Sort of towards the end of May. Yeah, middle to
Okay.
end of May.
Okay. And then you're going to do some consultant work. Is there a reason why you chose to do that, or?
Well, I was asked to by the board and by the entity that we're merging with. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you learn over 6.5 years that if you leave and you don't talk to people and you don't transition the right way, that's just a lot of tribal knowledge lost, a lot of relationships that have been built that we'll have to start all over again. And so, look, I have always said it's just as important how you leave a company or a business or a relationship as it is when you start it. You don't leave it and just say, hey, thanks, goodbye. And I've said to my team, I've said to everybody in the community, there's not going to be a day that somebody calls me and asks for an opinion or asks for, hey, how did this work or what happened here, that I won't pick up the phone and spend as much time as I need to with them, even after I'm not, officially consulting. This is something I've taken a lot of pride in, and I want to be extremely successful. So I'll do everything I possibly can. But it was at the board's request. That's who I work for and the shareholders. And so they're trying to, it's hard because you're sort of in the final stages of trying to complete this merger, take private. And if you're hiring somebody, you want to know what you're hiring them for, and they want to know what they're being hired for, but they're going to start the search, and I think they'll have somebody, or they'll identify somebody great.
For a nice smooth transition, I believe, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And when will we find out what your next step is?
Well, look, you can call me anytime and I'll be happy to tell you. I just felt like it wasn't appropriate. It's not announced yet. And I didn't feel like that was the thing that people cared a lot about. Listen, I understand when somebody leaves, there's going to be a lot of mixed feelings towards that. Is he abandoning us? Does he not care? Is this the sign that he thinks that this isn't going to happen? None of that's true. None of that's true. Sometimes in life, the timing of an opportunity versus the timing of something else that you're committed to doesn't necessarily line up. That was the case here. And again, as it was made clear to me that, probably there was going to be a need for a change in leadership, I had to think about, what was going to be next for me and my family and everything else. So I'll leave it at this. It's something that I've had a lot of passion around in my past life, and something that I've done, and something I'm excited to go do. But I will tell you that it's not any more exciting than what I've been doing. And this, to me, I said to you a long time ago, I'm from Ohio. I have a lot of passion around trying to help Ohio continue to be a place where people look at it and say, wow, there's a lot of great stuff going on in Ohio. And I'll just, again, Pam, I feel like I got to say this. When you look at what we've accomplished, and you look at just the simple fact that we are still standing, when so many other companies in today's world, I know everybody likes to boil it down to, well, you guys just aren't doing that great. We're still here as of today. We're still running a business. Our shareholders can still trade their stock if they want to. There are many companies out there that have not done that, and they've folded and they've gone bankrupt and left their shareholders with nothing. I'm pretty proud of that fact, but I've been invested in this for a long time, and personally invested in it for a long time, and I want it to be successful.
Well, I appreciate you giving me time today for sure, as I said, and I'm going to stay in touch and follow you on your path. And as they move forward with everything that's happening at the village, I will be one that will call and say, "Hey, what do you think?"
Yeah, please do, Pam. And I'll say this: I've enjoyed our relationship. You've been very open and direct, and asked good questions. And I think this community needs people like that, people that are responsible in what they do and report the truth, and don't try to connect the dots to a narrative that may not be the truth. And I think you've done a great job at doing that. So I appreciate the time and you letting me come on. And I'll miss talking to you. But as I said, call me anytime.
I will do that. I appreciate it, Michael. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Pam.